Hey there, super friends. This is Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is Friday. Yay! February 23rd, 2018. And yeah, you're listening to my driving rant, so cool on you. Yeah, it's gonna take a little getting used to. Sorry, guys. Eventually, I'll have a new intro worked out. Anyway, you may or may not have noticed there was no episode yesterday. There was one recorded, but it ended up like veering really off into left field and getting like way too political and like actual political, not gaming community political. So it got scrapped. But luckily WotC gave me something super exciting to talk about today. It has been a really exciting day. Not all good exciting, but first off, not gaming related, but if you haven't checked out the show Black Mirror, I definitely recommend. It's bizarre. Don't judge it by season 1, episode 1. That one's definitely like a special kind of weird and would probably offend most people's sensibilities. But each episode seems to be like a self-contained story. So really you can start on any random episode. Yeah. Really bizarre show. I'm really digging it. I tried to like listen to an episode at work today. That was a mistake. Nope. But all my streamers are off doing other things except for poor Todd Stevens, but poor guy is definitely not feeling well. And I start getting tired just listening to him. He needs to get himself some rest and some tea, or I don't know, maybe actually see a medical professional. I'm not a doctor. What the hell do I know? But let's talk Challenger decks. They were announced today. Apparently not going on sale until April, which is a little sad. I was like kind of hoping they'd be, right out there. But I'm going to try to remember to link to MTG Goldfish's video on them because Seth did an amazing job going over them, talking about the value. So I'm going to do the brief synopsis of that side since he does such a good job going over it. 4 decks, all based off of tier 1 decks. There's Mono Red. There's Mardu Vehicles. Blue-White Approach. And Black-Green Counters. So the vehicles and Mono Red deck at current card values are worth about $90 in cards. And the other two are closer to 80. But still, for, $30, it's pretty good value there. I believe they're going to be released to big box stores just like all the other pre-con decks always have been, which means that $30 price tag is probably going to stay. LGSs are going to have a hard time trying to kind of push that up to closer match the demand for them if they're available at big box stores. So again, linking to the video, go watch it. Seth does a great job going over them. They're actually pretty good decks. I wouldn't roll into a GP with one of them, but you show up to an F&M and you're like, oh crap, I don't have a standard deck. You're looking to get back into standard after being out of standard because of the garbage fire it's been off and on lately. Now, again, unfortunately, they're not out until April, but it would be a good place to start. You get the bulk of the cards you need. Now, like the Mono Red deck, it has 1 Chandra, 1 Hazoret, 1 Glorybringer. You're probably going to want more Chandras. Well, definitely going to want more Hazorets. 1 is just not enough because there's no tutoring in red. And, a 1 in 60 on any given draw for it being Hazoret, not very good odds. What do you do? Also, probably want more than 1 Chandra, but you may only want 2. I don't know. But it has like 3 Kari Zev, 3 Soulscar Mages, so I don't think a lot of 4-ofs, but still more consistent than decks of this type in the past have been. Like, you're seeing a lot more 3-ofs, considerably less 1-ofs, and pretty high value cards. I mean, I think Seth said when he was going over it, as of today, Chandra herself on her own was near $30. Now, things to point out, and Seth does point this one out. The value cards in the decks are going to be rotating in September. So if you pick one up in April, you're going to have about 5 months to play it before it loses a fair portion of its base. But, I mean, that's kind of where... See, the thing about that is, in this particular current standard meta, the Ixalan block has made way more of an impact on Modern than it has on Standard. You should probably back the fuck off there, friend. I signaled and everything. No. Alright, well, UPS truck's gone now. There's a special place in hell for people who double park downtown during rush hour. That's not true. UPS guy's just trying to do his job, and really they have insane-o delivery standards, so... Anyway, back to what I was talking about. If you look at the current standard meta, what there is to see of it right now, because it still really hasn't bottomed out, I don't think, since the bannings. Because we haven't had any major paper standard events since the ban announcements. We had some team events, but you really can't look at the team decks and call them defining to the standard meta. Well, any of the metas, really, because you can have one deck on your team doing poorly, and as long as the other two are doing well, you're still going to top 8. And there have been some classics and everything, don't get me wrong. But, I don't know. But if you look at what seems to be emerging out of this meta, Mono Red's still pretty far up there, and their deck list is a little bit watered down, not going to lie. Because, again, you want 4 Hazarets. Hazaret's like your endgame in Mono Red, so... But, still pretty close. So, the decks that are in the meta now, Ixalan hasn't really had much of an impact on Standard. That was kind of the problem. Whereas it has allowed humans, vile humans, to bubble up as an archetype. Has given some new life to merfolk. So the fact that none of the value cards are going to make it past rotation, I don't know if that's specifically the design from WotC, or if it's because that's where the meta's at right now. That Ixalan has been such an underwhelming block in comparison to the Amonkhet block, and especially the Kaladesh block. So we'll have to see the next round of Challenger decks to really pull data out of that, but I can totally see them planning that release cycle like that, where, okay, $30 gets you through like 6 months. Because, again, WotC is a company that's looking to make money. So, they're less likely to give you a deck full of cards that are going to be valuable for the next 2 years, right? So, by and large, reactions to the Challenger deck list have been very positive. And I think they're a good thing. There's some detraction, though. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm personally very much in support of what they're trying to do here. Because WotC, I mean, they care about the secondary market from the point that the thought that your cards will be more valuable sells more cards now. Whether Goyf is selling for $90 or $9 in the secondary market directly, WotC doesn't really care about that. They care about the secondary market existing because it gets people to buy more shit. And they don't want to, what was that? Chronicles? They don't want the same problem to occur again that ended up resulting in the creation of the reserve list. So they do care to a point, but really, if they're pushing to get more people involved in organized play, then you got to find a way to make that more accessible. Secret for you, WotC, raising the price of GPs is not the way to do it, but I've mentioned that a few times. I just think it's fucking ridiculous. $75, you're not even gonna give me a fucking playmat? Go fuck yourself. Sorry. I feel very strongly about this. GP prices going up, things included in your GP admission going down. This is like Oreos doubling the price of a pack of Oreos and then only giving you 2/3 the amount of Oreos that they gave you for the lower price. Anyway. So, I'm a fan of WotC doing stuff like this. So I am going to point out some of the counterpoints and discuss that a little bit, but understand I'm not being negative about this. I think that this is a great move. So one of the biggest concerns is that it impacts the finance side of Magic. You know, how much are Chandra's going to be worth now that you can either pay $30 for one Chandra, or you can pay $30 for a Chandra, a Hazoret, a Glorybringer, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that actually comes in one conveniently decked style product. You know, it's obviously better value, which of course is going to push down the price of Chandra. Now, I'm not a Magic investor, so personally, I don't really care much about that. However, I'm all about you experiencing this game in the way that gives you joy. I understand some of you out there are. And I don't want you to feel like I'm saying that you're dumb or whatever. Now, if you're trying to set yourself up to be retiring off of your Magic collection, I feel like you're doing it wrong. I feel like there are much surer investments you could be pumping that money into. But if you're just kind of dealing some cards on the side to kind of support your hobby, all right, that's a different story. So, yeah, this is going to put downward pressure on card prices. Just like the last event deck printed, I believe, was the Aristocrats deck that was in the Dragons of Tarkir through Shadows over Innistrad standard before Kaladesh hit, and they decided they weren't doing event decks anymore. Now, event decks were a little bit different. They were a 75 card set. So you had a 60 card main deck and a 15 card sideboard, but they were another product that consistency was way off because it was mostly 1s and 2s. You can see a lot of things that you got 3 ofs, not even in like the common and uncommon slots. Also, you know, you get 3 1-of bomb rares in these new challenger decks, whereas the old ones you got like 3 rares, period. So I bought 4 of that event deck because I needed hangerback walkers, and at the time it was the cheapest way to get hangerback walkers. Event decks back then were only $20, I think, and hangerback walker itself was $20. So for $20 I could either get 1 hangerback walker, or I could get a hangerback walker, a Tasigur, Warden of the First Tree, which at the time was also a pricier card. Was there a fetch land in there? I don't think so. There might have been a single collected company. So you could get more bang for that dollar. Now, I don't know. I don't know what hangerback walkers are going for now. I meant to check, because that would be a good indication of how this is going to affect prices in the future, because hangerback walker has found a home in Modern, I think. I think it's in that weird Ironworks combo deck. I don't really understand how that deck works. I watched Ross Merriam play it earlier this week. I think somebody on the Versus series played it in the somewhat recent past. I think Ross played it for their Modern day. And I still, I had no fucking clue what was going on there. It was like watching fucking Todd Anderson play Dredge. Or I'm like, what does he just cheat and take shit out of his graveyard? I don't understand what's happening here. So that plays Hangerback Walker. The Hollow One deck, I think, does. I think it plays that in Endless Ones because they're 0 casting cost creatures. They just die right away. Which also combos with Bridge from Below. So there are a couple decks running them in Modern. None of the super skippy decks. Not gonna lie. They're not... Tron would rather have Walking Ballista than Hangerback Walker because it can deal direct damage rather than make a bunch of Thopters. So, yeah, it does push down the prices of these cards. I don't know. I know some people are upset by that idea. Oh, great, nothing's ever going to hold value. But again, I've seen people complain that, there aren't enough players in Modern. It's because the bar for entry is so high. And I get that over time, Modern becomes cheaper than Standard if you stay with the same deck. Or at least the same idea, so that you get to reuse the more expensive cards. It's why, I had such a hard time buying into Modern cards at such high price tags. I'm like, what if I don't like this deck? What if the deck stops being good? And I've just lost all this money. But buying Noble Hierarchs and Cavern of Souls, it's a high likelihood whatever deck I'm running is going to have those cards. At least Noble Hierarchs. I can admit that Cavern... Well, no, because I really like tribal decks. At least one or the other, if not both. So, not only does this lower the bar of entry for Standard, but Chandra's seeing Modern play, Hazoret's seeing Modern play, Fatal Push... Yeah, that's one that there's only one of in the Counters deck, I think. Again, Seth did a really great job going over them and, pointing out the, it's not super bombastic. It's not the actual tier 1 list. There are changes you'd want to make. This deck only has 1 Fatal Push. You probably want 4. I think it's the Counters deck that has it. But it might be no, it's definitely the Counters deck. Because there was some other hour of black, the black hour, that, he's you'd probably want Vraska's Contempts in place of these, but Fatal Push has become as iconic to Black in Modern as Thoughtseize. If you don't get Thoughtseize turn 1 and they have played a swamp, you goddamn know that whatever creature you play is going to get pushed. What else is in there? That the Counters deck has 1 Walking Ballista. Again, seeing Modern play. So it is going to put downward pressure on Standard, but it also will likely affect the Modern market to a point. Now, not as concerned about the cards that there are one-ofs of. And it's not incredibly likely that any Modern player is going to buy these decks for a one-of when they're not interested in the rest of the Standard deck. But, again, I think it's a really good thing. Seth did point out, I think he pointed out on Twitter, I don't think he really talked about it much on his video, about, what does this do to master sets then? Because master sets are where they, try to reprint things that they can't put back in Standard because it'll break Standard. because they have been trying to depower Standard ever since Khans of Tarkir. Hell, within that single block, you could see the power shift. Dragons of Tarkir was way less powerful than Khans. And then it's been kind of going steadily downhill ever since, along with my enjoyment of Standard. So they'll likely never put fetch lands back in Standard, because that was just fucking crazy ass broken shit going on there. Collected Company, you're not likely to see it back in Standard, because it's been determined that card was way better than it looked. Unfortunately, the Planeswalker version of Collected Company was pretty bad. What other? You'll likely never see Thoughtseize in Standard again. I mean, look at the discard spells we have available to us now compared to Thoughtseize. Hero's Downfall actually doesn't see any modern play, which I find weird, but I guess you have better options. You have, is it Dreadbore? I think is the red-black, costs 1 red, 1 black for the same effect as Hero's Downfall, instant speed, destroy target planeswalker or creature. So, master sets are a way to create a new influx of these cards without having to worry about trying to balance the power level in Standard. So what happens when they're reprinting cards of this nature in these challenger decks? Now, Kaladesh was a particularly strong block. It's a shame that I really didn't care for the mechanics of Kaladesh. Otherwise, you know, that was near Khans of Tarkir power there. Amonkhet was decent. I like graveyard shenanigans. So, did they specifically target cards that are modern playable? I don't know. I don't know how long these decks were in the works, you know. I don't know what their development cycle's like. How long did they analyze the Standard meta pre-ban and then forecast the effect the bans would have? You know, were these deck lists put together pre-ban and then they had to go through and do some alteration post-ban? I don't know. I don't have any insider information. Nobody at WotC talks to me. I think Hugh from WotC follows me, though. Hey, Hugh. How you doing? But I don't have any cool insider information or anything that I could share with you. So, there happen to be a handful of cards, but honestly, by and large, with the exception of cards like Ugin and Karn, that without, you know, mana acceleration that's not available to you in Standard at that point, most cards that are good for Modern are also really crack-smoking good in Standard, like Fatal Push. Best removal spell that's been in Standard for a while. Because, yeah, hey, casting costs 2 or less. Well, you know, Magic players still look, they either play control, or if they're playing a creature-based deck, they're looking for threats that are cheap and cost-efficient. Even playing mid-range, you have a lot of early-game cheap stuff to keep you going until you can curve into your bombs and everything. So, Fatal Push is a great card, and then also having the Revolt clause, like, if it was 1 black, destroy target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less, period. That would still rate. Maybe that's more common worthy, because it has a pretty significant limitation, you know, as opposed to an uncommon, but that would still rate. It would probably still see some play. Maybe sideboard play, you know, just for against aggressive decks. The Revolt clause, with so many ways to trigger Revolt yourself. Evolving Wilds, Field of Ruin. I know I've held up a Fanatical Firebrand just so at the appropriate time I can tap and sack it to deal the 1 damage to my opponent and turn on Revolt for my Fatal Push. There's so many ways to remove your own permanents to turn on that Revolt clause. So it's good early game to deal with their early threats. It's good later game to deal with the bigger threats. So, of course, it has an impact in Modern, where the reason Goyf is as good as it is because it has the potential of being a 6-7 for 2. Not even all that late in the game, depending on what your opponent's playing. Because you look at decks like Grixis Shadow. Like, they throw shit in their graveyard all the time. So a card that can take down something that, people are exploiting for a high power and toughness and a low cost with a 1-mana spell, it's fantastic. So again, I don't know if the aim was to hit cards that are also impacting Modern, but if their aim was completely geared towards Modern, you'd probably see a Merfolk deck. That's the other thing. People, I don't think Seth was complaining about when the cards rotated. I think he was pointing it out. But I have seen plenty of people complaining about it. Here's the thing. If they said, okay, here's our 4 challenger decks, they're the 4 tribes of Innistrad, or of Ixalan, everybody would be like, wow, WotC. Yeah, this is kind of shittier than the Planeswalker decks. Because, again, Ixalan hasn't really made that much of an impact on Standard. None of the tribal decks are really topping the charts. Which, I think, even with Lords, because then you have one target to weaken the whole team. The reason Humans worked as a tribal deck in Standard, both in OG Innistrad and once Shadows over Innistrad came out, were Champion of the Parish and Thalia's Lieutenant. But for the most part, every once in a while you see Goblins be a viable Standard deck. But Tribal doesn't generally work in Standard. Because the card pool's already so limited in general in any colors that you're trying to work with. Now you're limiting it even further by saying, well, I only want creatures of this nature. So, I mean, personally, whatever the intent was, whatever the planning that went into it, I'm glad to see that these decks are focused more around Kaladesh and Amonkhet, because those blocks have had way more of an impact on Standard than Ixalan has. I would be way underwhelmed if these 4 challenger decks were mostly based off of Ixalan cards, because Ixalan just hasn't been a great block with what else is in Standard. Now, once Amonkhet and Kaladesh rotate, is that going to get better? Is Dominaria going to be matched more to what Innistrad's, Ixalan's doing? Or, people are in my way. Or, is Dominaria just going to totally overshadow Ixalan? We'll have to see, but in any case, I'm really excited about these decks. I can't wait for them to come out. I'm also interested to see what they do to card prices now, because I'm not going to lie, Black-Green Constrictor looks like a really fun deck to play. It's just the Walking Ballistas, man. I think I have one. But that's all I got for today. If you made it this far with me, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully I'll talk to you all on Monday.